Welcome once more to the viewers of USA Citizens Network, and welcome once more those of you that have been had the pleasure and the important uh, ability to listen to our guest today. This is the third of four podcast interviews with Alexander Schadenberg, who has since 1999 been fighting a battle in Canada against the euthanasia, which is placed in law, and um, in fact went well beyond what was originally said it would do. We'll get a little bit into that as we go forward. Um, Alex has got a significant following. I think the thing that I want to start with the viewers again is just to reemphasize his desire is to help us here in the United States, where we have 13 states with assisted suicide laws, uh, understand the how the euthanasia slipped in Canada and how it could be happening right here now with us. Um, we've just been discussing before the session the importance in the minds of men and women here in the United States understanding the distinctions between not just euthanasia and assisted suicide, but also when with the whole concept of hospice and the concept of when is it right to tell the doctor, yes, you can stop life prolonging procedures. Uh, I, as I've just told Alex before we started, I think I'm an attorney who worked in this field for a good while, and I understand that there's a strong individualistic spirit in the United States that I should have the right to do what I want to do, that kind of thing. So with that, and I'm going to let Alex, has been involved with this much more than I, speak to those in the audience with the idea of being helpful, helping them understand the importance of the distinctions and helping them to understand what is potentially coming down the pike as far as we're concerned. So with that, it's again my pleasure this third time around, Alex, to welcome you and let you speak to the uh, folks that are watching us.
Thank you, Bob. This has been a good opportunity to discuss these issues, and actually, previous to the show, we had a bit of a discussion as to what kind of issues Bob wanted to be covering. So I think I should first start with the basic definition. If those, for those who haven't seen the other two shows, I'll just do it very quickly. When we're talking about euthanasia, we are talking about something which would be an exception in the criminal code or in your code for laws uh, to allow homicide. So what happened in Canada? We legalized euthanasia in 2016. What happened is we created an exception in the criminal code for doctors and nurse practitioners to do homicide. So when you look at our Canada's Homicide Act, you'll see the exception. And in that it's stated that the person had to have a type of a terminal illness, they had to be 18, et cetera, et cetera. And there's all these different things that were in there to start with. And that, of course, got amended in 2021, which is what Bob was referring to, that Canada's gone way beyond what the original sales approach to what we were going to get is. In fact, today we've had euthanasia killings of people who are poor, going through just disabilities. You don't have to be terminally ill anymore. So we had the case, for instance, on December 30th of a young man who had diabetes who was killed by euthanasia, to the shock of his family that this had happened. And really, he was reasonably healthy, but because he was insulin dependent diabetic, he was approved based on having an irremediable medical condition. So you can say euthanasia is that when a doctor or nurse practitioner, is that how the Canadian law works, actually kills you. They inject you with a lethal poison. Now, in the U.S., you have assisted suicide now in 13 states. Assisted suicide is very similar. So what's the similar bit about it? The drug regimen is very similar. It's almost identical. The difference is that in Canada they use an injectable format because the doctor does it to you, whereas in the U.S. it's like a powder. You receive powder concoction, which is this poison concoction that would then be mixed with a drink. The other thing is they're both identical in the sense that they both intend to cause your death. So assisted suicide, the end result is you die. Euthanasia, the end result is you're killed. But the difference being is how it's carried out. So assisted suicide is carried out by you. So the doctor would prescribe to you, or the nurse practitioner would prescribe to you that lethal substance. You would pick it up from the pharmacy. You would mix it with a drink and drink it down. Whereas with euthanasia, the doctor would inject you. So it's similar because the outcome, the intention, everything in that way is the same. The difference is how it's carried out. Someone would say, well, that's a big difference. And I would say, well, there is a difference there. I'm not going to argue that there isn't a difference there. But let me explain to you how it can become the same. So there was just recently in the news, and I reported on it on April the 2nd. So recently in the news, there was a case in Colorado. So Colorado does have legal assisted suicide. So this was a case of two family members who were charged with the manslaughter death of their 91-year-old mother. It was actually a mother and a mother-in-law. So what it was is the daughter of this woman and the son-in-law of this woman, they got together and they staged what you would call a type of an assisted suicide death, but in fact they killed their mother. And originally it was treated like an assisted suicide, but in the end it was discovered that it was clearly a homicide. So what they did is they went to an event. There's an organization in the U.S. that provides information and training as to how to either kill somebody or kill yourself. So they're providing information about suicide practices or how you can, I'd say, as in this case, they killed their 91-year-old mother, how you can do so. And also they give advice to, the best ways to do this, as well as to make sure you remove any of the materials you use, so then it becomes an undetected death. Now you would say that's pretty grim. I would say it is very grim. Nonetheless, in those cases, most of those deaths are not discovered as a homicide because the training they receive includes removing the materials that they used to kill the person, as in this case. But in this case, they found the woman in her bed, and some of those materials that were used to kill her with were still present, and then the investigation began, etc. So here you have the intention of a type of an assisted suicide. That was the intention of the family. But of course, you have it as a killing. And this is the very similar situation. Now, in this case, the woman supposedly was not competent, and the family members decided that they would carry it out of compassion for her. So it's the same concept, because a lot of people would say, isn't it compassionate to do this? But obviously speaking here, this type of a mercy killing was so compassionate, it resulted in not only the mother-in-law's death, but their being charged, and they hopefully, if all the information that's been seen in the news articles comes out correctly, hopefully they are not acquitted. Hopefully they are prosecuted and they're found guilty. These are manslaughter. This is the type of a third-degree murder, you would say, type case. So you can understand what I'm saying, that the other thing goes further. I just received the data out of Oregon. The state of Oregon has had assisted suicide for a very long time. And their recent data shows us, once again, in the data, that even though they reported that there was 637 people in 2025 who had received this lethal poison concoction in the state of Oregon, that even though there were 637 of them, 90 of those people they know had died, but they have no idea what happened to them. So here we're talking about a law which allows doctors, and in this case in Oregon it's doctors, to prescribe this lethal poison concoction. But then when you have the situation of the reports coming into the government, they then admit in their data, well, we have 90 cases of people who were approved for this assisted suicide concoction, who we know they died. We have a death certificate. We just don't know how they died, meaning that there was no report sent in, there was no follow-up, there's no overlooking. Now, you may say, Alex, but that's just a bad reporting situation. Well, let me go one step further. Some of those cases would be possibly homicide cases, where someone actually did it to them. Some of those cases would be an assisted suicide death, but the doctor never sent in a report. Some of them might actually be someone who died a natural death, but then you have a situation where the concoction is available for someone else to use. So we're talking about life and death, killing or not killing. This is what we're talking about, and it's a very dangerous concept when you legalize this. So you sort of see where I'm getting to. Earlier in this discussion, though, before we started the show, Bob brought up the issue of people going to palliative care. And the question was, what is the difference between a type of a palliative care or an assisted suicide? Because in palliative care, they stop providing treatment, they only provide comfort care, and they know that the end will be that the person will die. You're going into palliative care not now. There is the odd case where someone goes into palliative care and not only doesn't die, but in fact they sort of graduate from palliative care. You can start, you do Google articles, you say yes, and there's articles of someone's mother who graduated from palliative care, meaning that they not only didn't die, but they got better. I actually know a couple stories like that. There was one in particular where the person was actually they were very sick, and it was thought that they were dying, but they were actually having a reaction to the medications they were taking for their illness. They went into palliative care, so you stop taking those medications and they only give you comfort care. But obviously, if you stop taking those drugs for your treatment and you stop having the reaction, sometimes actually the person gets better. It's funny enough. I'm not saying it happens all the time. I'm not saying it's common, but there have been stories like that, and it's very interesting like that. Anyway, what is the difference between killing then and letting die? Because with assisted suicide, clearly it's a killing. We're involved with killing them. We give them a lethal drug concoction, and in the other case, we're not doing that, but we're also not providing them any treatment. We're allowing them to die. So clearly the difference is that allowing someone to die is not actually involved with killing them. No one actually kills them. No one actually causes their death. They die a natural death. It might take several days. It might even take several weeks. But they die a natural death. No one actually caused their death. No one did anything to kill them. They kept them comfortable. Whereas with assisted suicide, the doctor is giving you a lethal concoction for you to die, and when you take that concoction, you're dead. With euthanasia, the doctor actually injects you with that lethal poison, and you die. And of course, the intention is for your death. And so these are clearly different things, okay? People often ask me about the further issues. Well, what about when someone says, I don't want any more treatment? Is there a difference between saying no to treatment and assisted suicide? Well, clearly, in every way, ethically, there's a big difference, because if I say no to treatment, I might die a natural death. That's correct. Usually it's saying that I find that there's a limit to my life, and I'm accepting that any continued treatment is not of any benefit to me anymore. Right? It's not providing me benefit. I am dying anyway. But, as I say, there's been lots of cases where people stop taking treatment and actually don't die at all. And I'll give you a difficult case if you go through the medical literature around the issue of the ventilator. So let's say, Bob, I'm on a ventilator, and everyone's saying I'm dying, and the ventilator's helping me breathe. And the decision is, we're just going to allow God's time to take its course, nature to take its course. We're just going to withdraw the ventilator. Do people always die after having the ventilator withdrawn? That's the question. And if you look at the literature, you see that about 10% of the time, the person doesn't die at all. They just keep breathing. They might have some difficulty breathing, but they keep breathing. Of course, many of them will die soon down the line, but they never died at all by withdrawing the ventilator, because they weren't completely dependent on the ventilator anyway. See what I'm saying? So there's a clear difference between that and giving me lethal drugs, which will cause my death and do cause my death, and the intention is clearly different. One is to withdraw a treatment and allow death to occur naturally, and the other one is to kill someone. And there's quite a big difference.
Okay, well, thank you. And I think that's important for the members of our audience to really ponder, because all of us are going to face death. All of us have to, many of us properly so, will fill out a healthcare power of attorney in which we empower an agent to act on our behalf if we cannot,
Right.
giving our wishes as to whether we would want prolonging life procedures to occur or not occur. That's a very different thing. It's allowing nature to take its course, God's hands taking us up, so to speak,
Yep.
as opposed to assisted
It's assisted
well,
killing.
suicide or assisted killing is a good way to put it, uh, where the doctor is an active agent in the killing, although the individual is making the decision to die, to be killed,
Now
versus
the difference, the difficulty about the person making the decision, because we like to throw that in because we know that it's very uncomfortable with the idea that it's possible that a doctor might actually make that decision. And so this is a very difficult thing when we're talking about competence. Now you were involved in a lot of family cases, so there must have been several cases where there was real questionable competence. This person is going to sign a will, sign a medical directive, power of attorney document, and is this actually what they wanted or not? And were they competent to actually make that do that signature? Were they actually saying this? Now, and sometimes when you talk to them, even they seem like they're capable of responding, but when you start asking them further questions, you realize it's really questionable whether they are competent or not.
you
And
raise a
this is a
very
difficult issue.
you again, Alex, you raise a very important point, and indeed, numerous stories I could tell along those lines. And one of the biggest problems we've had in this country has been the misuse of powers of attorney for
Yes.
financial gain. But to put it as bluntly as I can put it, so yes, it's not. We're not talking about a clear black and white situation. There's a lot gray in this, depending on the facts. But let's get back to you and to what you want us to be looking out for in terms of the euthanasia movement itself getting back into place in this country once more.
Well, I think that people aren't fully aware about how aggressive the death lobby is, and and all of us, um, how would you say, have our own fears. We fear possibly a bad death. We fear, we certainly fear suffering, and I have no interest in you suffering. I don't want you to suffer. I want you to be properly cared for. Nonetheless, we don't understand how aggressive the death lobby is. We want to believe them when they say this would only be for those very few cases, because that's how they sell it. I recently just wrote an article about how the euthanasia lobby, the assisted suicide, the death lobby in America, is really focusing on Arizona. There's another state they're really focusing on, which is Florida. Now, why are they focusing on those states? Now, first of all, they don't have enough support in Arizona or Florida right now with the political situation to get assisted suicide legalized in those states. But they're really pushing hard. They look at those states as having a type of a demographic that they believe will result in the end of people supporting them because it's an older demographic in both Arizona and in Florida, and they're pushing very hard. So recently there was a bill in Arizona, an assisted suicide bill that went nowhere. The Arizona government legislature was not interested in passing it, but the death lobby was writing about the fact that we need to do this in Arizona, not the fact, their idea. We need to do this in Arizona, and how they're drumming up more and more supporters and more members, and they're raising money and they're spending money in those states to legalize. And so people would say, well, that's not going to happen here. And I'm thinking, well, normally speaking, it wouldn't, but this is a lobby that's very aggressive, spending lots of money, and they want to trick you. They want to trick you into an idea. They want you to think that you have two choices. They want you to think that the one choice is that you're going to suffer, and in order to avoid suffering, you can have assisted suicide. So those are the two choices. They don't want you to think that there's three or four choices, meaning the third choice, meaning you'll have a natural death. You're not going to suffer greatly because you're going to be properly cared for, you have family around you. They also don't want you to think that actually, the reality is, Bob, actually most deaths are not painful. People don't want to know. They don't want you to think that way. The assisted suicide lobby wants you to be in fear because that drives their support up, people being in fear. It also makes people make decisions that are outside of their normal, how would you say, moral area. For instance, Christians do not believe in killing people. Part of our Ten Commandments. Very simple. We do not support killing people. But people will be thinking, yeah, but I wouldn't want to suffer like that. See, because they've got the fear mode in the person ramped up, and they're trying to push for legalization. So you see that right off the bat. You want to pull out the truth. The truth is you can be properly cared for. You don't need this. The second thing is they are selling something which is not the case. They're going to say it's only for those very few cases, but they never mean that. And right off the bat, none of these laws are tightly defined. There's not an assisted suicide law in America. Of the 13 states that have legalized, none of those laws are tightly defined. So right off the bat, there's no way they intend to limit it to those very few cases of people who are nearing death and suffering, because that's what they're selling it to you as, very few cases. They're not wanting it to be limited to that at all. Secondly, all of these laws expand. Everywhere where they've legalized it, they always do the same playbook. They'll legalize it in a state, such as I said, Illinois just legalized it as an example. So as soon as that law goes into effect, they're going to start working to expand the law. They're going to see maybe in 2 years' time a bill in the Illinois legislature which will be to eliminate certain quote, quote, safeguards in the law. So what was sold to people as a safeguard in the law in order to make it so it's only for those few, which was never the case anyway, then they'll say, well, that's discriminatory. We have, let's say, a 15-day waiting period in the law saying you can, once you get approved, you have to wait 15 days. They call it a reflection period. It's to ensure that you absolutely want this. What they'll do is they'll push for that to be eliminated. They're going to push for that it be changed to who can do it. So most of the laws now, they've expanded who can do it, because the problem with the laws is that there's too few doctors in America willing to kill people. So that's a problem for them. They'll say, well, why are there so few assisted suicide deaths in the state of Oregon? Well, the reason there's so few is actually not few. There was around 450 in 2025. It's not a small number if you start thinking of the total population of Oregon. Nonetheless, one of the reasons there is a lower number is most doctors want nothing to do with it. They're not involved with it. They won't be involved with it. They won't do it. So obviously, a lot of these states are changing their laws to allow nurses to be involved, doctors' assistants to be involved. They're adding who can do the act, and they're adding the number to the number of who can do the act in order to make it more available. These are the kind of things they're doing, and they're also pushing for euthanasia. Why? Euthanasia is, sadly, even though it's homicide, it's quicker and easier to do.
Alex,
It's easier to get someone to kill you.
excuse me for interrupting you, but let me ask you. I'm sure this is on the minds of the folks that are listening to us. Number one, the lobby that you talk about in this country or in Canada, are they well funded? If they are well funded, what is their end? What is their objective? What are they trying to do? Are they trying to cull the herd, so to speak? What? That's a very graphic way of
I know what you're saying, Bob. The problem with all these situations, Bob, is there are the leader activists, the ones who lead the organizations, and then there's the average person. The average person in these organizations tends to be someone who is an atheist, who believes there is nothing outside of this life itself. They tend to be those people, and they are very, very well funded, very well funded. In the U.S., the Compassion Choices Group in 2024 had around a $30 million budget, which was quite significant considering the fact that they had at that point legalized in 10 states. And I know they had California already then, which is a massive state. But I mean, they are a well-funded organization. They have lots of employees, lots of people involved with doing lobbying in the different state governments, etc. What is their end goal? Their end goal is suicide on demand. They believe that you didn't choose to be born, therefore you should have every choice to be killed at any time of your choosing. You may say that sounds weird. That sounds extreme, Alex. You start reading their manifesto, it has got everything to do with the choice to die at your time, and it's got nothing to do with terminal illness. The reason they add terminal illness into the laws for legalization is because Americans aren't ready for suicide on demand. They know that. The polls show it. Americans don't want that. So if you're going to shoot for something that people don't want, you're not going to get it. So they say, we're going to put safeguards into the law. We're going to say you have to be terminally ill, so they have that 6-month definition. They're going to say you have to be an adult. They're going to say that we're going to have a bit of a waiting period, so we're going to make sure you're. And we're going to say it's only done by doctors. That's how they started it out. We're going to only let doctors do it because you feel a lot safer. It's a doctor who's doing it, Bob. They're professionals, right?
Mhm.
And they make it very clear. But their end goal is suicide on demand. In Canada, because of how um, the definitions are, they're almost achieving what you would call homicide on demand because you don't need to be terminally ill. So now we're talking in Canada euthanasia. So the doctor does the act. We created an exception in our criminal code to homicide to allow doctors and nurse practitioners to actually kill you. That's what it is. You can call it anything you want. You can say, "Oh, it's for mercy." Well, whatever. They're killing you. That's what they're doing. And there are no clear definitions in the law, and there's total coverage for them. Now, in the U.S., you have the same situation. So if you look at the Oregon assisted suicide law, Washington State's assisted suicide law, etc., and you read them, you say, oh, the doctor who prescribes the lethal poison, they only have to say that they did so in good faith. It uses a good faith definition, which means I did so in good faith. So if you accuse them of doing something which would be, let's say, this person wasn't terminally ill, this person really had a lot of mental health issues going on, and in the U.S. they can't do this yet for mental health issues alone. In Canada, as of March of 2027, you will be able to do this for mental health issues alone, but in the U.S. you can't. So if you've got family members all upset and saying, "Well, Doctor So and So killed my mother. This was the situation, etc., etc." Doctor So and So only has to say, when questioned, "I did so in good faith," meaning I believed I did so within the parameters of the law. That's all they have to say.
Where are they
Look at the
getting this?
Oregon law.
Where are they getting this funding, Alex?
Well, there's several who you type of people who you'd call multi-billionaires who are donating to them. So George Soros has been a strong funder of the euthanasia death movement for a very long time,
I did
not
not
only
know
in the
that.
U.S. but worldwide. Yeah,
Okay.
he's a big supporter of them. But along with him, he's got quite a few of his friends who are doing the same. The other place they're getting a lot of money from is from wills and estates. Now you may say, how is that? Well, if the organization that's involved with killing you does so, um, a lot of people might say, "Oh, well, we have to help them do this for others." So what they're doing is they will say, "I'll put you my will." So they change their wills just before they die, and they add in it the organizations such as Death with Dignity or Compassionate Choices. They add them into their wills, and they get a lot of money from wills and estates for killing people. Now, because I'm involved with trying to help people live until they die naturally, I'm opposed to killing people. I wish there were more people who would put us in their will in order to help them live. People would say, "Well, he really helped me with great advice. He helped with our doctors to convince them to provide excellent care for this person at the end of life. Maybe we should add them to the will." But no, it seems to be that people who want death seem to be more extreme that way, and they put it in their wills. Yes, they get a lot of money from wills and estates.
Well, let me jump again. Our listeners will see at the bottom of the screen how to uh, reach you, not only to learn more if they so desire, but if they did want to put you in their will, they can do it. Uh, I bet you that there are folks out there that have some uh, financial means who are driven by the Christian ethic and say, all right, I think what this man is doing is good. He's helping us stop this movement in this country, and they'd be willing, either through a deferred gift or in their will. So uh, I encourage anyone that believes what you're saying is right, that there's something fundamentally wrong about allowing the system to decide to kill you, that they get behind what you're doing in every way they
Yeah.
can, including learning, including uh, getting your podcast out to others, to get them to learn, to get them to support. I'll stop with that.
So we have an international group, Euthanasia Prevention Coalition, but also we have EPC USA. EPC USA is a 501c3,
Okay?
and you can find that just by putting into Google EPC USA. Maybe I shouldn't be using the word Google, nonetheless.
Hmm.
Um, Putting into the search engine EPC USA, it comes up, and you're easily able to make a donation to EPC USA 501c3. This is an opportunity, and the fact of it is that we need to prevent other states from legalizing, but we also need to change the states that have already legalized in order to stop the killing. I'll go one step further. One of the most important things you can do, and I don't know how political your show gets, Bob, but I'm just going to say to people, elections have consequences.
Sure.
So one of the most important ways to prevent the spread of assisted suicide is when you vote for someone who's not part of the pro-death movement. You vote for someone who doesn't believe in the pro-death mentality. You believe in someone who upholds the life, and that life is not only sacred, but important to be protected. And the reason you do that is because if you do the other thing and you vote for someone who might have nice hair or says nice things, but they are pro-death, you'll get what they're promising you. They're gonna, if they're pro-death, they're going to bring forward bills and legislation that is pro-death. That's what they're going to do. So if you oppose that, don't vote for those people. Don't do that. In fact, be aggressively voting for people who believe in your right to live and support you.
Well,
I'm opposed to killing people. That's this fundamental basic thing. So I would never vote for someone.
so in a,
Notice I didn't say any names here.
I
You can figure it
understand.
out for
I
yourself.
understand. So in a town hall meeting, someone should get up and say, Mr. or Mrs. X, what is your position on euthanasia? In front of the rest of the group and see what they have to say.
Right. And in the U.S., you'll have assisted suicide as the topic that they might be bringing up, and that's important.
Well,
But
that's a good point. What is your
yeah,
position on assisted suicide? Right?
correct. Yeah.
Okay. Alex, this has been a good, fruitful session. We've got another one coming up yet. Let me let you now take a few minutes just to summarize what you want to say to the folks that are listening. That includes people within your network and includes people within ours. Please, sir, go ahead.
So I really do believe that your life is worth living. I believe that as a culture, though, we really have to care for our brothers and our sisters around us because sometimes life can get difficult. So a lot of people say, isn't it merciful to assist someone's suicide? And I don't think it's ever, first of all, I don't think suicide is ever a good thing. I think it's always a tragedy. But I don't think it's ever a good thing to assist someone's suicide either, or to cause their death in any way. I don't believe that's a good thing to do. And I'm not talking about war now. That's another issue.
Mm-hmm.
You can have that discussion with ethicists in another way,
All right.
another time. We can stay away from that today. But anyway,
Right.
the point of it is that I believe it's fundamentally important that we care for each other. And I sort of put out a call to you. I say, well, one of the things that's really driving this pro-death mentality within the culture is the fact that we do have a lot of separation now in the culture. We have a lot of loneliness. You have a lot of people who, as they get into different health situations or they might become quite older and, they have a hard time getting around, etc., that they start feeling that they lack a meaning and they lack purpose. They don't have people who seem to visit them and care about them and speak highly of them anymore. And they become down. They're emotional. They're human beings, right? They're human beings. And I really say, I challenge you to recognize the importance of the interconnection we have as human beings. That I'm here and I live my life not only to take care of myself and my family, but to care about others. To recognize that it's fundamentally important that we don't kill them. When you're going through a difficult time in your life, you will find that having someone in there who says, I'll spend time with you. If you want me to spend time talking to you, I'll talk to you. I'll be there with you. You don't have to be alone. I'll advocate for you. I will do my best to be that person who is supporting you until your natural end. That somehow life seems very different than when you're going through that all alone, which seems to be becoming far more of a cultural phenomenon than ever before. So we
Well,
need each other.
we
And we
do.
need to care for each other.
We
And we
do.
shouldn't be killing people. That should never be the case. And that's
That's
basically what I have to say.
well said, sir, and it's a great way to end this particular third session of our four. And again, Alex, I thank you very much and look forward to our next get together coming up shortly.